Welcome, Troy Love. I can't believe it's the end of another month.
I
Here
know.
here we are at the end of April.
It's
Crazy.
almost May already. It's crazy.
Yes,
I can't believe
yes,
it.
yes.
Hmm.
So we're waiting for questions from our group, but you have the betrayed partner. I'm sorry. We've got a betrayed partner group starting tomorrow too, but you have the attachment wounds work group starting this week. So let's
Tonight.
talk a bit about that. Oh, is it
Actually,
tonight? Oh
it's
my gosh,
tonight.
I'm so okay. Starting tonight. There's still room. So
There is lots of room. Yeah. So it's a 6-week class. It's supposed to be 90 minutes, but sometimes we go over just a little bit, depending on the discussion. It's a pretty interactive class. It's based on the workbook that I wrote called Finding Peace, and it specifically addresses how the model fits with people who are struggling with sexual compulsion or sexual addiction. It's a men's group. So it's a this is probably the fourth time
I
that I've
think
done,
so. Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
it's always been a positive experience. The men seem to get a lot out of it. And so if you don't have anything else to do tonight and you really would like to do some more recovery work, the cost is relatively inexpensive. And you get to hang out with some amazing guys for 6 weeks, and I get to hang out with you, which would be amazing for me. So I'd love to have you join us.
You'll find that on the Seeking Integrity site, and you can always email me, Tammy, Tami, at seekingintegrity.com if you've got questions or need help getting registered for that. So yes, we've had a whole bunch of them starting again this week. So it's keeping track of which, but yeah, there's a bunch of different, for foundational, porn addiction 101. The betrayed partner group is so good. If you are a betrayed partner, it's communication, healthy boundary. I mean, it's those, core components. Angela Spearman does a great job, with those as well. So again, low cost psychoeducation. It's not the same as treatment or therapy. It's also not, I mean, many therapists do recommend that people participate in those because you'll have some enlightenment, some aha moments that you can take to your therapist too. So it really does help things progress, and settle too. So we still don't have questions. So
No, if
what
you have
could
any questions around attachment wounds or attachment theory, or what's going on in your relationship that we
oh,
can
we got one.
try to answer.
Yay. I missed it. Oh, I missed the first a couple minutes. What event are you talking about? So on our website, on the Seeking Integrity website, you know what? I will share my screen because I can do that. So hang on a second. I'm going to share my screen and I will show you. You can see this, right?
Yep. Mhm.
Okay, so these are the online work groups. So it's on the Seeking Integrity site. And it talks about they're via Zoom. Most of them are 90 minutes. Troy's runs a little over. I'm not terribly surprised. But these, and you can click through, but there's Sex Addiction 101. There's 3 parts to that particular one. And then we even have recommendations for, if you've completed that, Porn Addiction 101 for guys who have only struggled with and I don't mean to minimize, but if all of the acting out has been virtual online, then porn addiction is a better fit than sex addiction. Out of the doghouse for men who have been caught cheating, the betrayed partner work group. So we have that from a pro-dependent lens. The couples impacted by betrayal trauma, we only offer that one twice a year. That one just started in April, so we'll offer it again in the fall. Why Men Struggle to Love with Dr. Eddie Caparucci, healthy intimacy and sexuality. And yes, you have to take the intimacy before you get to the sexuality. That's with Dr. David. Healing attachment wounds. That's the one that starts tonight with Troy Love. So yeah, but all of these are, if you've got a foundation, this is the stuff that's going to help you, continue with your journey. Going deeper is the inner child with Dr. Eddie. So spiritual abuse, that's a new one that's starting. Many people have been traumatized by a religious organization, a community, or whatever. And so, that one is specifically for men, but to work through those, and for people who are struggling with, like, I have, a belief system, and then my acting out, contradicted it, and and all of that it's very complicated. So I think it's a brand new course that we're offering. So that's another one to check out. So, okay, well, Troy, let's talk about attachment wounds in a more general way. Oh, we got a question. Thank you. Please, it's so much easier if you ask questions. So, okay, I have learned I don't have to carry my wife's anger. I used to be afraid of her anger, which often led me to act out. Through doing the deep work, I've realized that I need to address my own feelings and not live in fear of others' feelings. I feel a great weight lifted.
That's
So that's
beautiful.
more of a comment. Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think there's, especially when we talk about the shadow of shame, the martyr, that a lot of us carry around with us, that tells us I am responsible for everyone else's feelings. It's my fault if somebody else gets angry. It's my fault if somebody is hurt. And when I talk to people about it, some people are really reluctant to give that, like, to deal with the martyr, because they feel like if they don't have the martyr, then they will become arrogant, and they'll become like, they don't care, more of the rebel side of things, like that they don't care about other people's feelings, and they're not going to have compassion. And I can understand why they would come up with that fear. But the martyr just says, the martyr isn't saying that you can't take ownership of your behavior and that it had an impact on somebody else. It's just saying, when we're living in our truth, it's I am not responsible for how you feel, and I can't try to control that. And if I do, that's not going to work out really well. I'm responsible for how I behave. I'm not responsible for how you feel. And if I cannot get sucked into shame, I can actually hold space, and we can work through how my behavior may have impacted you without getting stuck in a spiral. So I love that you've been able to figure out how to do that. I'm sure it is relieving to do that.
Yeah, the martyr one was the one I hated the most, to learn that I have some of that. Like, I don't like that. And, but I also, it's helpful to understand those things. And, yes, when I'm trying to control things out of fear or shame or whatever it is, then I'm responsible for everything, and I'm not, and that is a huge weight, and it doesn't work out well for me or anybody else. So, staying in my lane and understanding I have control over myself, my actions, my reactions, I can share information, I can show up, but what people choose to do, is really their deal. So that's very freeing, but you got to get to that point, because otherwise it's like, I'm burdened under all this weight.
So heavy.
So control. I mean, like, I have so much control over the world. Not. Okay, next question. My wife, who I betrayed, has triggers most days. She goes into trauma brain, fight or flight, and usually chooses fight. She goes straight to belittling, berating, shaming, and telling me the ways I'm feeling. In the context of many wins and much progress, it is hard for me to hear the all or nothing black and white statements. I start with some shame spirals and then try to pray and breathe. She further shames because I am shutting down. In the face of her rage, the wounds of attachment are at work. Advice, I keep hearing not to take it personally. I struggle with empathy at that time, but I am trying.
So you are dealing with something that a lot of people deal with, even outside of an addiction relationship. So part of it is what we just talked about, which is you are not responsible for your wife's feelings. But that's a really hard thing to wrap our head around, because I did act out. I did betray you. So I must be responsible for your feelings. And you're not. You're only responsible for your behavior. And you can own that caused pain. So I love that you are breathing and you're praying. One of the things to maybe pray for is a reminder that you're enough and that you have what it takes to be able to hold space and be able to be grounded as she is sharing what she's sharing. So here's a secret though. What she's complaining about is not really what she's complaining about. So she may be belittling you and saying things that are hurtful. What is underneath that? And sometimes in our defensiveness, our own fight or flight response, we have a hard time hearing what's underneath that. So she's attacking, and she's going into the all or nothing. You never, I can't trust you. Like you're always going to look at porn, those kind of things. Well, what's underneath that? Probably fear. I'm afraid that this is not going to work out, that I'm never going to be able to trust you again, that I'm going to be unhappy for the rest of my life if I stay with you. So there's those fears that she has. And this is generally the case, not always, but generally the case. A woman's greatest fear is being left alone. Left alone with her emotions, left alone taking care of the house, left alone raising the kids, left alone in the bedroom, left alone anywhere. And so that fear of I'm going to be left alone provokes them to fight. And what it's maybe not the most effective way, but she's really trying to say, I want to fight for this. And if I get into shame and immediately shut down and pull away, do you see the dynamic of that? I'm pulling away, which leaves her alone. And so then she freaks out because she's like, you're leaving me alone. Is it hard to lean into that? Absolutely. So we learn how to breathe. And sometimes it's like, if I'm feeling too overwhelmed, we take a time out and say, I will come back. I need 10 minutes. I will come back. That's the secret. But being able to lean into that. But the core part for you is to lean into you're enough, you matter, and your wife is hurting. And out of all the people on the planet who probably could help her heal the most, it's you. So if you can breathe into that, that would probably go a long way.
And I have a couple of thoughts on this too. When you're in the midst of this is never a good time to problem solve. So when you're not in the midst of one of these, having a conversation and say, like, we get into these patterns and it's not helpful for either of us. I want to be there and show up. So can we talk about, how we can do this differently? Try something different. And, if you're feeling triggered, what would be helpful for me, but it's also, I don't think abusive language, if your wife is really going to abusive language, that isn't a healthy boundary for you. It's like, when you're that triggered, I want to stay present, but if we can have a discussion about this, great. If I can help you, great. But, for my personal safety, neither partner deserves to be, abused, verbally abused, physically abused, etc. The other thing is when I hear she's triggered on a daily basis, first of all, I kind of wonder if this is very early in the process. If she hasn't taken one of the work groups that I mentioned earlier, the betrayed partner starts tomorrow. And there's a betrayed partner drop-in group today at 12:30 Pacific time. So if you're in Central Time Zone, that'd be at 2:30, but connecting with other people and having a safe place to process that and learn some skills about healthy boundaries, for her. And I've shared this before too. I think having we're not going to get into this 24/7. We're going to journal and we're going to keep, and then at scheduled times, and we show up, and it's no more than 20 minutes, ideally 10 minutes for each of you. And we process through, these are the issues, but particularly we're doing some journaling, we kind of get to, I'm really angry at you. I'm feeling triggered, but it's really because I'm afraid, it'll take a bit, but with the right support and help. So, at the end of the day, and I mentioned it a moment ago too, at the end of the day, I can control my actions and reactions. That's it. I can't control anyone else. I can make things worse. I can add fuel to the fire, but if, I often say to addicts, I'm sorry that my past behaviors have hurt you. I'm doing today what I need to do to not do that. Don't make any promises of I'll never do this again. But just also know that a betrayed partner, typically it's 12 to 24 months after you've stopped and you're showing up differently before they start to really be able to believe it. You knew all along you were acting out. You know, you had that information. Betrayed partner has discovery and their entire world is rock. So there's a time gap, but if you do consistently actions that show that you are becoming trustworthy, that's what betrayed partners can start to go, okay, things are a little different. So it's a journey. There's no arrival. Next question, Troy. My SA husband has a disorganized avoidant attachment style. Can you explain how this attachment style relates to addiction?
Yeah, so disorganized attachment style, I don't know who called it that because it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But what it basically means is that as an adult, his behavior is really inconsistent. So he behaves one way one time and then he's really a different way another time. But what that is based on is growing up, typically the caregiver, so his parents or his whoever was providing for him, did it in a way that created fear. So whether they were abusive or they were never there. So you think about like the attachment styles of neglect or abuse or rejection. And if the parents, those caregivers were the ones who did that to the kid, what the kid begins to be confused about is, well, here are my caregivers. They're the ones who are supposed to take care of me emotionally, physically, spiritually, all those things, and yet they're not safe. So therefore, who is gonna be safe in my life? Nobody's gonna be safe. So there's a very anxious part of that. But then one moment they will say, well, I'm gonna try and be vulnerable, and the next minute they're like, nope, I'm out. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. So that can be very confusing for the partner. But the question is, how does that relate to addiction? Well, regardless of your drug of choice, whether it's porn or cocaine or alcohol or food, the outcomes of engaging in those behaviors are pretty predictable. So I know that every time I do a line of Coke, I'm going to feel this way. I know that every time I drink alcohol, I'm going to feel this way. I know that every time I look at porn and end up finishing, I'm going to feel this way. So that's a very predictive outcome. So where somebody who has a disorganized avoidant attachment style, they have this thing, although it's not very healthy for their brain, and it destroys relationships and all of those things. They have this thing that feels very predictable. And so they turn to that as a way of trying to create some predictability in their life. And in the meantime, it destroys everything. So it fuels the anxious, disorganized attachment style, because we're not usually in our right mind when we're doing that. The way that we're responding makes the other person feel unsafe. So then they pull away. And so it gets trapped. So the good news, though, is that some people believe that different types of attachment styles can't be changed, but this one totally can. It takes a lot of work. It may help if you found somebody who knows how to do dialectical behavioral therapy, where they help the person have a better idea of what's going on in their mind. But it is treatable, and they don't have to continue turning to their drug of choice to create that continuity in their life. But that's how it relates.
And I hear what you're saying is that, like, this is safe for me, but it's also causing the chaos. And so it's like playing out in my real world. See, the real world is not trustworthy because of like these relationships that, it's not working out. So I'm going to keep using my problematic behaviors, so it feels like this loop of, where the problematic behaviors are pushing other people away. So interesting to try to get above that and be able to see that, yes, you have to learn to try to, dip your toe into vulnerability, and it's with humans, they're not going to be perfect, but hopefully the pattern, you see some change. So challenging stuff always, but worth the work. I'm not sure if this is necessarily applies to this group. First time attending this one, welcome. My husband has recently figured out that he is a porn addict and has started when he was really young, like 7. He has some major problems with his mother throughout his entire life. She lied and manipulated him, her husband and her daughter pretty much their entire lives. I believe my husband needs to go all the way back and address his childhood trauma with his mom. He'd rather leave it alone. Thoughts?
Well, we do believe that me personally, and I think Tammy agrees with me as well. Me personally do believe that the source of people's addiction to trauma or addiction to porn or sex or drugs or alcohol or food is based in trauma. And I talk a lot around attachment wounds, loss, neglect, rejection, abandonment, betrayal, and abuse that often happens to us when we're kids, and then we find some tool or something that helps us feel better as we grow up. So that is part of the work. At the beginning of treatment, though, we don't normally like dive right into the trauma. We need to give you some tools and strategies to like create some sobriety and not numb all the time, which is what we've been doing. Because my experience is if I start stirring up all your trauma and you have no tools to deal with that pain, well, your brain has been wired to know exactly what to do with that pain, which is going back to your drug or your behavior of choice. So we got to give you some strategies to do that. So a lot of the drop-in groups we have provide some of that. We do recommend that people find a qualified therapist in their area who can walk them through that. Going to a 12-step meeting is also another tool that's free that can help begin to put some tools in place so that he's in a much better position mentally to then deal with the underlying trauma that is very much at play with why he's doing what he's doing.
So I'm putting a link. I 100% agree. I hear all the time. We have so many guys that come to treatment who I try to do my trauma work, but they didn't have the tools to be able to. Yes, there's always, trauma, abuse, abandonment, parental enmeshment. So I just put the podcast, Dr. Rob. If you haven't been on this platform before, welcome. But the Sex, Love, and Addiction podcast with Dr. Rob has had over 1.2 million downloads. Troy has been on a guest on there too, but 2 of them that may be helpful. Dr. Ken Adams did one with Dr. Rob on mother enmeshment. Again, dealing with the mother enmeshment until you have stopped the porn addiction, have some tools to use so that as you're getting triggered, it's just going to be probably impossible. The other one, neglect, the silent abuser. Dr. Enid Gray's book on that, and she did a podcast as well. But there's all kinds of abuse, and I think that can be interesting too, because you name some of the things. Every guy that comes to our treatment program has neglect, abuse, abandonment, trauma, grief, loss. I mean, there's those are the maladaptive. I mean, that's why the addiction is a maladaptive coping mechanism. It's all of these things, and like Troy just said, we go right back to the things that we know that work to numb us out, help us escape, even if they actually cause problems. But but stopping the problematic behavior is the very beginning of, of the process. That's just the first layer. So stop that, have the tools and support, and then, addressing this stuff, it's in layers, but it's as you can tolerate it. Dr. Rob also shared, because somebody was highly triggered by the trauma work, and he said, tell your therapist, we need to slow this process down. I need to regroup and have the support to deal with this layer. And then, as you can tolerate it, do another layer. Lots of people know the why. They know why. They know they had a crappy growing up. And they know that that's the problem with the addiction. And guess what? Knowing why doesn't change anything. It's how do you change? How is it better? How do I, where I am right now, move forward, on a different path? Bad stuff happens to us, but we don't have to be victims of that forever. We can learn to go, okay, this stuff happened and now I'm going to do things differently, which is what, Troy's work with finding peace, it's about attachment wounds. There's always wounds, but we don't have to be bleeding out, for every single wound. Oh, I also put in the chat, the work group, the Porn Addiction 101 starts again on Saturday. If he hasn't done the foundational work, that would be a really good place to start. And the Betrayed Partner work group starts tomorrow for you. If you're new to this process, get the support for the foundational components so that we say a foundation, because if you build a foundation on sand, guess what? It's going to fall apart. If you build a solid foundation, then, the pieces, come together and you can have longevity with this. Next question. When we make those agreements about what to do with triggers or what to do with timeouts when we are not in trauma brain, it makes sense. But when the trauma brain occurs, the agreements don't really seem present or in effect. They go out the window. She isn't a logical brain and just pushes me away and tells me to leave. I try to come back in 15 to 30 minutes and say that.
So I don't know. I think what you are saying is like you'll go back 30 minutes later and you'll try to remind her that she was in trauma brain. Maybe that's what you're saying. Of course, when we go into fight or flight response, we are a couple of physiological things are happening. The most primary thing is that the blood that normally goes to our prefrontal cortex, where we make logical decisions, we're able to manage our emotions, we're able to tell ourselves better stories, all that blood goes away. It goes to our heart and our lungs and our biceps and our quads, and it makes our stomach ache and want to like get rid of stuff because our brain thinks we're in danger. So yeah, we're not thinking clearly. We're not. So part of that is you and she, and hopefully you two have a therapist that you're working with. You make an agreement about how you're going to handle that, and then you handle it the way that you agreed, even though she's in fight or flight. And if she's pushing you away and tells you to leave, don't like leave, but like go to the other room, give her some space. And then 30 minutes sounds like a reasonable time to just come back in and check in with not rehashing that discussion, but checking in with how are you doing? Like something triggered you. What's going on? So I can't give like black and white answers because every couple has different things. But if you're able to follow through on what the agreement was, it actually creates safety. Even if she's mad that you are following through on the thing, too bad, because she's going to be grateful that you actually are being consistent. There's a huge betrayal piece here, and we often don't do what we say we're going to do when we say we're going to do it. So if I start actually doing it, there's a couple of things that happen. They meaning not just women, anybody. Like sometimes I need you to not go along with what you said you were going to do. So I have more tools to like throw at you and say, see, and all of a sudden you're behaving the way that I wanted you to behave. And dang it, now can't use that. But I'm mad that I can't use that. So there's a lot going on. And you just have to work on being in integrity, doing what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it, and grounding. And if you need to go and she tells you to go away, go pray, go breathe, go call somebody to get yourself grounded so you can actually show up the way she's hoping you're going to show up.
And I'm hoping, I read this and I was like, I come back in 15 to 20 or 15 to 30 minutes and say that. I'm hoping you're not saying you're not in your logical brain. That would be like, I was like, that will go over like a lead balloon. So, but I love what Troy was talking about, saying just checking in on you. And yeah, somebody's got to start. So, I was thinking too, yeah, having, like, do you need to have a sign on, like if this happens in the kitchen, do you have a sign on the fridge? Debbie McCrae did a webinar last Friday, and she teaches her partners to do this, stop, 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 stop. And she has them say it out loud, and they do it like 7 times. And I thought, well, that's brilliant, because that interrupts whatever's going on right now. And either or both of you could do something, whatever you need to do, that will help you go to the thinking part of the brain. But I say this often, nothing changes if nothing changes. You guys can keep doing this forever, and so you changing and doing what, like Troy said, doing what's in your integrity. This is what I agreed to do, even if she's not. If I do what I say I'm going to do, that's integrity, and that does show that you are changing, even if it's not working the way she wants to. But ultimately, if you guys are like, I guess that's part of the conversation, like have a scheduled conversation. What is our goal? If our goal is to heal this relationship, how do we move forward rather than continuing to repeat the exact same patterns that are, keeping that gap for us? Update on the biological dad story. He is in the hospital and in bad shape, doesn't remember me, but I get different stories and makes me very unrestful and nervous. I'm thinking if I should visit or not. Pros and cons, any advice?
I'm not sure if you're getting different stories from him or you're getting different stories from other people. Sometimes if somebody is like dealing with Alzheimer's or those kind of things, they do remember things that happened from a long time ago, but they don't remember other things. At the end of the day, I can't tell you what to do or not do, but at the end of the day, after your father passes, are you going to wish that you had spent more time with him in the hospital, or at least went in to see him, or are you at peace with not? So what does your heart tell you? And try to, I know it's hard to do this, but try to fast forward 5 years from now and kind of looking back and saying, okay, am I going to regret that I didn't go see my dad, or am I at peace that I didn't go see my dad? And so there's pros and cons to both, but really it's what are you going to feel comfortable with in the future based on what's going on right now.
Yeah, and I agree, and shut out the noise of other people telling you what you need to do. It really is what does your heart tell you need to do for you? If he's not going to remember you, it's not about him. It's what do you need to do or not do for you. It's okay. Next question. My new therapist said she'll find out my attachment style, but doesn't label. Is that a good thing?
Well, I don't like the label either. I hate the fact that I even have to give people diagnosis just so I can bill their insurance. I mean, sometimes having a diagnosis I think is helpful, but I'm not fond of labels either. However, when we have vocabulary to be able to talk about what's going on with this, it makes it more manageable. So you don't have to like slap on a label that you are avoidant. What you can do is oftentimes I engage in behavior that looks like I have an avoidant attachment style. What I do is I try to avoid what's under that, or I'm anxious. And not using it as a label about your identity, but using it as a way of being able to talk about, well, what's underneath that? What's the fear underneath that? What I engage in those behaviors in the hopes that and being able to talk about the behaviors. So I think knowing what your attachment style is can be helpful, but I don't like labels either. So that was messed up.
So there's a continuation. If you scroll down, sorry, I didn't specify, but I asked my therapist, CSAT, if she considers betrayed partners co-addicts, and she said she'll find out my attachment style, but without labeling. Just wondering if that's good. Is that
Well, here at Seeking the Integrity, we don't believe that the partner is a co-addict. We believe, I mean, they could also be addicted to something, but just because you're the spouse of somebody who's struggling with addiction does not mean that you're a co-addict. We call that prodependent, because oftentimes the partner really does want to help their partner heal. And so there's nothing maladaptive about that. So labels in and of themselves, again, I don't think are helpful. Being able to have vocabulary to talk about what's going on, I think is more helpful. Some people like to use the identity. Like if you go into a 12-step meeting, you'll hear, hello, I'm Troy, I'm an alcoholic, I'm an addict. And they use that label, not as a way of shaming, but as a way of them being able to have vocabulary to talk about their situation. So really it's, if I'm using it as a way to be able to talk about and improve my situation, I think that's helpful. If I'm using it to like shame somebody or myself, not so helpful.
well, and I was thinking and I personally was completely freed when somebody explained to me that you are an addict and there's hope for you, because otherwise I was just nuts, and so like it was helpful from that standpoint. But I think often, when there's a fracture in a relationship, things appear different, and you could look like you're anxious and avoid, but with other people you're not, so I think anything, particularly in a single session or whatever, it really takes, somebody really unpacking it, and I do find, like, as I mentioned earlier, finding out that I have some martyr in me. I hate it, but it's also useful information, understanding. I knew I had an abandonment wound. I did not know I had a neglect wound. And so, but having information that helps me go, oh, that's what's getting poked, and there's a way to handle it, that is useful. Just having a whole bunch of labels, and again, what Troy said, about codependence, we don't label people codependent. We use that codependent lens versus people who are still hanging on to, there is no such thing as codependency, but they're still, I get it all the time, multiple times a week, where partners are being labeled as part of the problem. Now, co-addict, I will preface it with the, are you in the struggle together? Yes. So, there, you could make a case for, as part of this person's addiction, it has affected you, but that doesn't pathologize you. So if that, makes any sense or helps. If it doesn't, take what you need and leave the rest. All right, next question. Sex and love addict, 8 months since discovery, working on full therapeutic disclosure, CSAT weekly, support group sponsored, working with the SEPs. Yay. I recently broke a boundary in going to a mixed meeting and not telling my partner. I did tell her within 24 hours. To complicate it, we were physically intimate before I disclosed. I can't seem to manage my fear of abandonment enough to be fully transparent. I don't use that to excuse my actions, but in my reflection, I do feel it is fear that keeps me in jeopardy. Because I compartmentalized and was physically intimate with her, she rightfully feels betrayed. How can I overcome my fear so I don't get stuck in this cycle? Great question.
I love that question. First of all, thank you for honoring and taking ownership of your behavior and your feelings. So there are some strategies that can help. Like if you know that you're out of integrity, oftentimes it's helpful for you to call an accountability partner and talk about it with them first, because you've now at least got that out in the open, and so it's a little easier to talk about, and then you can tell your partner. So it's like a practice round, I guess. And during that time of talking with your accountability partner, they can ask you some questions so that you can really do some more introspection so that you're in a better place to be able to have an open and honest conversation with your partner, because you've been able to sort that out with them. The other part is, what are you afraid of? What's your deepest fear? And maybe not in that moment, because that's a whole different conversation, but as you continue to build your relationship, you can talk about what your deepest fear is, and your partner can talk about what their deepest fear is, and what you need in order to feel safe, and what the other person needs to feel safe. If you don't know how to do that, I mean, it sounds like you do have therapists, so that's really awesome. Working through that with your therapist. What is like my deepest, darkest fear? She's going to reject me. She's going to abandon me. I'm going to be alone. How do I breathe into that? How do I step into that fear and still have integrity regardless of the consequences? And honestly, that takes practice. But the fact that you're asking me that question means that you're ready to do that work.
And I really appreciate that you are, yeah, I mean, you're 8 months in, and with all due respect, that's awesome and, chip worthy and all that. But, this takes time. We talk about, usually it's like 2 years. So, before you're really transparent, I really I want to cheer. You told the truth within 24 hours. Hopefully next time you do it sooner and time it differently. But, that's one of the things, and she can be very upset with you, but you told the truth, so we say tell the truth and tell it faster. So it's progress, not perfection, and hopefully the next time something happens, you show up sooner, and you then it's not like you get a gold star, for telling the truth after you've been lies of omission. But the more progress you make, hopefully, but you guys are really early in, and she's still behind you on that. So, okay, this is a 4-parter, Troy. This is a lot, so hang with me. I'm a year and a half out for my second D-Day. First was 2017, but didn't know anything about betrayal recovery. Then with my partner for 6 years. We own a house, live together. My partner left the relationship 3 weeks ago in a rage because he's wanted resolve in the relationship, i.e., me showing, oh, this is a betrayed partner, showing empathy and remorse for my behavior from triggers. He's been in recovery for a year and a half. I don't think so. He thinks he's maybe stopped the acting out. He thinks I should be further along in my own recovery. I'm devastated he's given up on us. Is there a way to repair? But I'm going to keep going because there's really different questions. He said he's lost himself in our relationship and nothing he does is ever good enough and doesn't love himself. I wanted him to find himself in our relationship, but I haven't been emotional available to him until recently. I feel like I'm too late. We've worked so hard the last year and a half through couples therapy and my own healing. I've been dismissive, passive aggressive, and defensive towards him in the past. He doesn't care about the why. He takes responsibility for why I have been hurt. Looking at me reminds him of the pain caused by him, and I've caused him. I'm at such a devastating loss. Thought we were going to be together to the end. He said we never bonded. I don't know what that means. Oh my gosh. Okay, this person, stop. These are usually ones, so don't type anything more. He says he hates that he cares so much about being validated, but that he's the kind of person he is and don't know how to be his partner. I've apologized for what I've done and how I've affected him, but I've struggled apologizing after it happened in the moment, so things have built up. He's very reactionary right now and defensive and doesn't care about my amends. I can see how hurt he feels. The invalidation probably reminds him of his abusive alcoholic father. What can I do? And this is the last one. I don't want to make any financial decisions when he's in this space. He wants to sell the house and leave when he can afford it. I think he's making a huge mistake in running away from a difficult dynamic that has developed over our relationship because of his betrayal. But I want him to know that I'm not stuck anymore and want to support him in a healthy way. He said he shouldn't be in the relationship.
So your partner has a tremendous amount of shame going on. And when shame is happening, a couple of things happen. One, well, the number one thing that shame does is it makes it all about me. I'm bad, I'm flawed, I can't do this. This relationship isn't working for me anymore. I am horrible and you are not showing up enough for me. So there's a lot of me in this, like I and me and I and me. I can hear that you love your partner and that you care about your partner. That is like really abundantly clear as I'm reading this, as there's a tremendous amount of shame. Shame unravels connection faster than anything else, according to Brene Brown's research, faster than anything else, makes it worse, makes it disconnect. So, and honestly, there is nothing you can do to make him do his shame work. What you can do is have boundaries. What you can do is do your work and be able to continue to lean into that you are enough, that I hear that you're taking ownership of some of your behaviors, and I'm sure you've done those because you were scared and hurt, just like he is. At the end of the day, though, if he's going to stay in shame, the relationship will not work. You will drag it along and you will continue to feel responsible, and he will continue to want you to be responsible, and he will also like beat the crap out of himself and say how horrible he is, which is not romantic at all. So hopefully he can get some support with a therapist who is familiar with doing shame work. I don't know if it's too late or not. I'm hearing you asking questions about what to do to repair. You do you work on you, and you can say, hey, I hear you're hurting. You got to work on some stuff. I can't fix that. Super scary. I know there's a lot at stake, but that's really what comes up for me.
So I hear a person that isn't in recovery, he may be abstinent, but when he's raging and blaming you, that's all blame shifting. So he may be in the shame, that's true, but in recovery, if he was really doing recovery work at a year and a half, you would start to see things different. You saw the person that posted a bit ago where he's showing up within 24 hours. I mean, like this whole thing, I never loved you. Dr. Rob talks all the time about nothing you did or didn't do caused this. Nothing you do or don't do is, it continues this. So he is responsible for his journey. You can act in ways, I hear this, that partners say, I threw things or whatever. They're feeling like they're not acting, taking responsibility for your actions and reactions is fine. But where you're making amends to him, he betrayed you. He's the addict who, he should be working to do things that will help close the gap with you. This feels highly manipulative to me. So there's a betrayed partner work group starting tomorrow. It talks about how to set healthy boundaries for you. A relationship. So there's one more thing. There's a podcast with Dr. Stan Tatkin about in a healthy relationship. We are working towards, having a good relationship. We care about putting the relationship first. And that can be used by an addict going, see, you need to do that. No. Or what I hear from him is me, just like Troy said, me. I've never loved you. I've never whatever. So I vote you do what you need to do to take care of you physically, emotionally, financially, and spiritually. Having healthy boundaries for you is about your safety, not about what he's doing or not doing. But yeah, that's a really complicated one. But please work with a qualified betrayal trauma specialist, someone who can work with you from a codependent lens and help you with your healthy boundaries and taking care of you. Okay, so will it take a porn addict longer to recover if they don't talk to their family anymore? I know it upsets my husband, but they attacked our marriage and we no longer talk to them because of lies, etc.
Well, that they added more
Do you think it'll take a long? Oh, I know it is. My in-laws and his siblings have caused a lot of trouble for us. Also, a side note: his family never knew about him being a porn addict, as far as I know. Okay.
I don't know. I mean, we're wired for connection, and those are probably your husband's obvious original connections were his family. But if they're not healthy and they're not supportive, it may actually take his addiction longer to recover if he's still engaging with unhealthy people than it would be if he wasn't. So I don't know if I can say it's black and white. It sounds like there's a lot of drama around his family of origin. Um, there's still work to do around family of origin issues, but you don't have to like be involved with them to do that. There's a lot of people who have issues around their mom or their dad, and their mom and dad died. So how do you do family of origin work if they're dead? Well, a lot. Psychodrama, lots of different ways, writing letters, like there's a lot of ways that we can do that. So it's not a necessary thing. I don't think it will affect how long it takes to recover. What will, it's his willingness to be honest. That is what will take it longer. So I don't think it's a prerequisite for him to interact with his family of origin to heal.
No, and lots of people in recovery have family of choice. It's the safe people that they create the healthy attachments with. So, but yeah, I mean you know, and there's no magic switch. If you or like if you do these couple of things, then it's going to magic. This is a lifelong journey. If we are an addict, we are forever an addict. Now we can be an addict in recovery. We can be doing our journey with integrity, or we can be an addict in active addiction, or we can be the fence straddlers who go, I'm abstinent, but I'm not doing any work, and I'm going to blame everybody else, and whatever. So there's lots of places on that spectrum, but if he does the work, and he does it to the best of his, I'm saying he and she, but for the addict that does their work on a daily basis and continues to make progress, you'll see that, and the days add up, and then the months, and then the years, but you'll be able to look back and go, wow, things have really, changed in this time frame. Like I said, even the person at 8 months, isn't doing it perfectly, but that's not the point. We strive for progress, but they were showing up. They were going, I'm telling the truth within 24 hours. That's different than living in active addiction. So, but it really is about who's safe. We don't think it's great to tell everybody, I'm a sex addict or I'm a porn addict. If you are in connection with them and you're sitting around the Thanksgiving table, how awkward is that? So like people don't need to know all of that stuff. Having the betrayed partners have support by other betrayed partners, having the addicts have support with other addicts who get it. That's where you have the real and honest conversations. Next question. Betrayed partner with the addict that had a question about crossing boundaries. Yes, I'm upset and crossing the boundary. I can get past that. I thank him for telling me within 24 hours. My issue is that after he crossed it, hid it from me, compartmentalized, and then had sex with me, I feel so hurt, betrayed, ashamed again because I was physically intimate with him. I feel tricked and used, knowing that he is trying to change, but still capable of deceiving me into being physically intimate is what I'm struggling with. How do I overcome the hurt that I'm feeling? Thank you for asking that. That is real.
Yeah. So I am imagining that the greatest pain is that you were deceived. That he was, no, I'm assuming he, yeah, you said he, he was not in integrity and he was not honest. Most of the women that I talk to, they can deal with the behaviors for the most part. What they cannot deal with is being lied to. And every time that the lies happen, it's like all the marbles get taken out of the marble jar. So at this point, there's probably no marbles in the jar, and maybe the jar is shattered on the floor. So you going to some support groups where you can feel the love of some other women. We Tonglen is a website that is available for a lot of betrayed partners. We have the sex and relationship healing drop-in groups for betrayed partners, where you can feel loved and not feel alone, because oftentimes this is really hard to talk about with anybody because we feel embarrassed and ashamed. So being able to wrap yourself up with some support. The other part is, what do you end up believing about yourself because of his betrayal? And is that core belief actually accurate? And I'm willing to bet it's not. I'm enough. I'm worthy of being told the truth. I am worthy of love and belonging. And when you breathe into that truth, it empowers you to have it empowers you to follow through with the boundaries that you've already set. And honestly, it becomes his job to be able to rebuild the trust, because at this point there isn't any. And so it's going to hurt that there is no trust. You didn't get married to this person or in this relationship with this person because you didn't trust them. And so it's going to hurt. So getting over that only happens with time and honesty. And if he can't seem to figure that out, it's going to hurt. And I want you to still remember that you're enough and that you matter and that you're worthy of having a relationship with somebody who tells the truth and is honest. And that will guide you into making the decisions that you need to find greater joy and peace and love for you in your life.
And it is difficult because you want to believe that he's making, and he is making progress, but you want to believe that he's trustworthy. You know, I often say to partners, you know, you'll never be able to trust him fully like you did before discovery, because you know that he can betray you. But it hurts me when, you know, people say I feel ashamed. You know, it's not, shame isn't helpful, but it's also not it's his actions, you know, that cause that. Hopefully, you know, he is learning from that. And what do you need to do for the moment, you know, for your healthy boundaries, you know, to take care of you? That's, you know, and understand, you know, this is like the analogy of like the shattered trust bowl, you know, jar on the floor, you know, but you know what, the trust rocks are sitting there. So hopefully, you know, he can start rebuilding again, little by little, and you'll see. But you know, I mean, we're humans, like we muff up regularly anyway. But with addicts, it's really, you know, it's such deeper brokenness. But an addict in recovery that's really doing the work, they show up differently. You can eventually, and it's going to take time, but you can have a better relationship, more honest, you know, with somebody who shows up and tells you the truth. You know, like real normal people don't always do that. You know, they live superficial lives. So an addict in recovery that is willing to do the work, a partner that is willing to, you know, be on this path, you guys can have, you know, there is hope for a really good relationship, you know, if you can hang in there for the journey. So okay, we are basically out of time. So a couple reminders: work groups. Troy has his attachment wounds for guys starting tonight. That could be a really good fit for some of the people or partners that are here. There's a betrayed partner drop-in group free on Seeking Integrity at 12:30 Pacific time today. The Porn Addiction 101 starts this Saturday, and the Betrayed Partner Work Group Part 1 starts tomorrow. So check out the resources on Seeking Integrity. Email me, Tammy, TAMI at seekingintegrity.com if you've got any questions. For the person that said I missed part of it, the recording will be posted later today on Seeking Integrity. So thanks, everybody. Thanks, Troy. I'll see you at the end of May.
All right. See you. Bye.
Bye.